Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Hey, there's our last day here in the beautiful ocean region where we are, and looking forward to getting back home and getting back on the news full time. But wanted to drop a quick episode before we do that for those of you who wanted the latest in the ongoing saga of the Nancy Guthrie case. It's funny because even down here where we are, I've had so many people come and approach me and say, "Oh my gosh, what about this? What about that?" People are obsessed with this case. As I said last week, I think it has to do with a lot of things, including the value that we place on a human life, that we've done this repeatedly. When the nation zeroes in on what has happened to one individual, we all pitch in collectively. Like the nation will be satisfied in getting a result one way or the other. And it's been an incredibly crowdsourced investigation. And I think that gives a lot of people purchase in what happens with the investigation. And I think that's a very positive thing. More on that in 1 minute. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. If you are stressed out about getting out of debt, it's go time. This is one of those moments where timing matters. And let me tell you about Done with Debt. 2025 was a record year for them. People who collectively had more than $102 million in debt turned to these guys for help. And right now may be the best time to negotiate a settlement. Done with Debt tracks credit card and loan company behavior. They're experienced at knowing who's negotiating and when, and what it takes to get you the biggest reduction possible. You don't know all that stuff. You can't figure that out on your own. Go to an expert who's got these things wired. Whether you are carrying $10,000 or $500,000 in debt, this may be the best chance you will get all year to get rid of it. So consider scheduling a free consultation. It only takes a few minutes. Imagine waking up without that weight on your shoulders, without all that stress every day, and doing it without taking out another loan or filing for bankruptcy. Done with Debt helps you through the debt relief process so you keep more of your paycheck every month. Go to donewithdebt.com right now. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. The latest last night is something that we have news on. There's a local reporter who works for Arizona Family named Brianna Whitney, who reported that, quote, "We can now confirm through an inside source," that's all she says, inside source, "investigators believe Nancy Guthrie abduction was intended burglary, and DNA evidence is currently being tested from the Range Rover that was seen being towed away on Friday." The Range Rover being towed away on Friday is a reference to that Friday night raid. This happened late into the evening Friday, where the feds executed a search warrant on a home with a female and a male, believed to be mother, son, and then also stopped a Range Rover, a dark gray Range Rover, described by some as silver, though, which we believe he was also connected to the people who were inside that house. It's unconfirmed. That's our understanding, though. And it seems that they may have had a lead directing them to one member of this family, and then, covered the field with a search warrant on somebody driving the car, and then a mother, son, we believe, again, pair inside the home, and they searched the home. No arrests were made. And that's still being investigated, but doesn't look like, at least on first glance, they found their man, and they don't think they found their man. But what she's reporting, this Brianna Whitney, is that DNA evidence is currently being tested from that Range Rover that was seen being towed away on Friday. Okay, so that's still an open question. But the part about, we can now confirm through an inside source that investigators believe the Guthrie abduction was an intended burglary. To say it's gotten pushback would be to undermine what's actually happened now. Both Michael Ruiz of Fox News Digital and Matt Finn of Fox News and my own sourcing has all said that's not the case. Here's Michael Ruiz. Authorities are distancing themselves from fresh reporting suggesting the Guthrie abduction is believed to be a burglary gone wrong, and that the widespread investigative belief, Brianna also reported this, is that Nancy, quote, could be alive. So they're distancing themselves from that. A local law enforcement source tells me this is not the working theory inside the unit, and adds that nighttime residential burglaries are rare. Sheriff Nanos also spoke with Matt Finn of FNC, quote, "Did not come from us, no idea, and even though that is one of many possibilities, we would never speculate such a thing. We will let the evidence take us to motive." No suspects have been publicly identified. As you know, the FBI is currently awaiting additional test results on a glove. I'll get to that in a second. Then Matt Finn reporting, the FBI tells me it has no clue where that came from, that they are leaning toward this being a burglary gone bad. So the FBI is pushing back on this with two sources at Fox. I've also gotten pushback on this with my own sources connected to the case. I don't know this reporter, Brianna. She's been good so far, but everybody gets things wrong in the course of an investigation when we're trying to work our sources and get a lead. As she describes hers source, it's just inside source. Don't know what that means, but I think the two reporters at Fox and yours truly all have law enforcement sources, all of whom have told us that's not the case. So I would take that with a hefty grain of salt that they're now looking at this as some sort of burglary gone bad. The other big reported news yesterday came out of NBC and Tom Winter, who reported that authorities are leaning away from the Friday night guy. Again, this is the theory that there's one guy who was suspected, and we don't know why. Maybe it was cell phone tower data that he was near Nancy on the night in question. Maybe it was a tip that was called in. Maybe he looked like the porch man. Maybe he looked like one of the other men that we saw on people's porches last week via Ring video. But something led them to this one man, and it appears his family around him. And NBC's Tom Winter reporting that the officials are leaning away from that guy, away from Carlos, poor Carlos, the DoorDash man, who I thought we'd already ruled him out, but he's reporting that indeed they are leaning away. And he also added that they are leaning away from relatives of Nancy Guthrie, which is an interesting way of phrasing it. What does that mean? Savannah, Annie, does it include the son-in-law? Tommaso, who's married to Annie, you could thread that needle such that it doesn't, but I think relatives would fairly encompass the son-in-law, and that does not dovetail with our own reporting today. We have contacted our law enforcement sources, and we have been steered off of that, saying no one has been cleared. They have not moved away from anyone, and until they have a perpetrator under arrest, assume everyone is still under scrutiny. So, the NBC report may have led to some in the Guthrie family feeling a bit relieved this morning. I'm here to tell you they should not feel relieved. Everyone is still under scrutiny until someone is in handcuffs, and that includes members of the Guthrie family. Sorry, but that's the truth. And I trust my source absolutely. Okay? This is somebody with impeccable credentials and is in a position to know. And so I wouldn't be getting too relieved if I were anybody in the Guthrie family or elsewhere for that matter. We've never suggested it has to be this guy Tommaso. We haven't suggested that he's off the hook either. So I think keep an open mind. Want to keep going now on the reporting. Okay. That Range Rover that was stopped during the traffic stop the other night. I mean, it is of interest, like what led them to this Range Rover. It was stopped in a Culver's parking lot about 2 hours from Nancy Guthrie's home. And the person who was driving it was detained, was handcuffed, and there was plenty of video of the FBI interviewing this man. I think it was the FBI, it was a federal warrant, but the local law enforcement, I believe, was also in the field. He was later released. No arrests made, and the vehicle has been impounded and sealed. So they are still trying to extract DNA or other evidence from that vehicle, and who knows whether that one could eventually pan out. I'm drinking more coffee right now because did you guys see the report that those who drank 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day staved off dementia? Like 70% of them. It was crazy. Like the numbers. Check Alec Berenson's X feed because he tweeted out the medical study. Here I go. 2 to 3 has to be caffeinated cups a day, or 1 to 2 cups of tea. Showed amazing results in staving off dementia. So drink your coffee. It's amazing. Over the years, try as they might, they cannot prove that coffee is bad for you. Isn't that a gift? I mean, we're just waiting for the similar study on alcohol. But right now, it's coffee. So drink your coffee and steer clear of the booze because everybody says that one's bad for you. Okay, so no one has been excluded and pushback on the theory that it's a burglary and also the theory that they've moved away from the family. And here we are 2 weeks and a day removed from the day they determined that Nancy was missing. Yesterday was the 2-week anniversary, if you will, forgive the term, of when she was discovered missing. It was overnight Saturday into Sunday, January 31st into Sunday, February 1st. And perhaps the most promising lead they have to go on right now, other than those porch pictures of the perpetrator, well, there are two, which I want to talk to you about. One is the possibility that Nancy's Nest camera retained other photographs, just like it retained the photographs of Porchman. And Sheriff Nanos gave an interview to the Daily Mail, which was eye-opening, saying, by the way, he too pushed back on the thought that this was a burglary gone bad. He said, again, this is a kidnapping. The only thing we're really looking for was the motive, and that we don't know, but did not seem to think this was some guy trying to burgle the house, which doesn't make any sense anyway. He had a backpack on his back that was stuffed to the gills. That he didn't have some empty bag. Okay, he might have had some Santa's sack inside that he was going to unveil once he walked in, but do we really believe that? Not a thing was taken. If this is a burglary gone bad, wouldn't you at least get your loot? How is his loot was an 84-year-old woman. There is no evidence thus far, nor has Sheriff Nanos even suggested otherwise, that anything was taken inside. And in fact, Nanos has been dumping on the idea that this was a burglary gone bad, which he wouldn't have done if some massive thing of value was missing from inside the home. Okay, so he says, first of all, he gave a number to the Daily Mail that I hadn't heard before. 400 law enforcement from the Sheriff's Department, FBI, and other local, and I think other agencies, because we've heard Customs and Border Patrol Protection has also been there scouring that desert landscape. 400 to look for Nancy Guthrie. I mean, that is, I don't even remember a law enforcement operation that had 400 combined federal and local authorities, and they cannot find this woman. I mean, think about that. That guy, he looked like a doofus, was shoveling the vegetation on the doorbell camera. That guy has befuddled 400 law enforcement agents so far. Maybe he's not a doofus. What we think about him is, at a minimum, he appears to have been a local, because he came on board that porch. He seemed to know where to find the vegetation. Seems like it wasn't his first day on Nancy Guthrie's porch. I agree with law enforcement. This was likely targeted, and that he knew it was Nancy Guthrie, and he knew that she was Savannah's mother. That's my guess, based on all the reporting we've done. And you tell me how this guy was able to avoid any cameras. A lot of the cameras now, we've learned, did not work on the roads, on the main highways, but you can't tell me all of them did not work. It appears to me this guy took the local roads and therefore was likely a local guy in knowing how to avoid cameras and so on as he escaped from this property. So it does seem likely that he was a local. If Harvey Levin is right and police are really taking those alleged ransom notes seriously, then that would be more evidence he's a local, because those alleged ransom notes seemed possibly to come from a local resident. Why else would you send it to two local Tucson stations, in addition to TMZ? And also reported that Nancy was being held within 12 hours, a 12-hour drive of Tucson, according to TMZ. Again, so in any event, that's where we are. And on the subject of Sheriff Nanos and the latest reporting, this is what I wanted to tell you. He said that specialists in cloud-based video systems at Google are working feverishly to extract more information from the cameras. That's good to hear. Specialists in cloud-based video systems at Google are working feverishly to extract more information from the cameras. So it may be that the FBI doesn't have more images that it hasn't released to us. It may be they don't have more, but Google is searching for more, and that we may still get more. He goes on to say, quote, "I just hope they can scrape a camera shot down to the driveway to identify a vehicle. because my goodness, you can't put a mask on a vehicle, right? So that's very interesting from the sheriff that they do believe that Nest camera in the front, and who knows, maybe even in the back. He's been tight-lipped about what might have been around that back door. Maybe they caught additional images. And I've heard some speculate about why was that intruder so determined to cover up the Nest camera when he was covered head to toe? And he's like staring right into the camera as he shoves the vegetation. Like, who that's worried about the camera looking at him would who would care? Because he already has a ski mask on and he's done his best to camouflage his identity. Well, what if it was that he knew he'd likely be taking Nancy out the front door because his car was there and he didn't want the pictures of Nancy being stolen to be on that Nest cam? Maybe that was his main motivation in covering up the Nest cam. We know that, well, we believe we know that she came out the front door because of the blood droplets. That's an interesting thought that this guy, he understood she was coming out the front door. That's why he had to cover up that camera. And if the FBI has pictures of Nancy alive, if Google can uncover pictures of Nancy walking out of that front door of her own free will, I mean, obviously under duress and possibly under the threat of being shot. We know that the intruder had a gun, but that's still something to know that she was at least alive when she exited, which remains a question, at least right now, without the videotape. So say a prayer for the geniuses at Google to find that needle in the haystack tape. We don't know when he successfully got the Nest camera off of its cradle. We know he eventually did it because it's gone. And the sheriff says, we don't have it. So somebody took it. My own bet is he tried to get the front one off. He tried to camouflage the front. He probably then went around to the back and he was able to get in the back door. And I believe that there was forced entry there based on Banfield's reporting. Now, it's probably back there that he figured out it's actually pretty simple to get that Nest cam off of its cradle. And once he figured out that one, he probably took the front one down, probably before he came through it with Nancy, is my guess, which means it would have been up for a little bit longer and there might have been additional photographs that could be quite helpful. Again, the sheriff says the specialists in cloud-based video systems at Google are, quote, working feverishly to extract more info. I bet they are, and you couldn't ask for a better team, honestly. And on the front of a better team, my reporting is that the FBI remains frustrated at the fact that they're not getting the first crack at the DNA analysis. And that leads me to the glove, or gloves, plural, that were found 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home. I believe these are the two gloves that the New York Post was present for the discovery of that look identical to the gloves used by the perpetrator. Well, the FBI did something extraordinary over the weekend, and it put out a statement. We've talked about this in the Charlie Kirk investigation with Tyler Robinson and how frustrated people are that the FBI hasn't been saying more. And I said to the audience, the FBI they don't update you on cases. They let you sit and stew with nothing. So it's very rare for them to put out statements on their investigation. I believe the reason they're making an exception here is because we have a missing person who might still be alive, and she's believed to be in bad health and could be in a dire situation right now. So they're doing everything they can to keep people interested in the case and keep them updated on where things are. And they put out a statement on two gloves. Okay, they've all now said that the Fox News report that there was a glove inside of Nancy Guthrie's house is wrong. We told you that on Friday. But it is true that they recovered many, many gloves in searching the area around Nancy's house. But the two that they're most interested in right now are the two that the New York Post was there on the ride along for, or at least following law enforcement. I'm not exactly sure how they were there when they found it. And the FBI has released a statement on the analysis of those two gloves, which is not being done by the FBI. It's being done by the Florida lab. And you remember from last week, there's been some consternation over that. Why aren't we using Quantico, which is the standard, the gold standard for lab analysis? Why are we using a Florida private lab that hopes and prays it will be certified as a reputable lab by the FBI lab at Quantico? Like, why wouldn't you go to the lab that is like the gold standard? No offense to the Florida lab. It's just nothing appears to be quite as talented and reliable as Quantico. And I certainly think the FBI feels that way. Here's the statement. The gloves found approximately 2 miles from the Guthrie residence in a field near the side of the road were packaged up by PCOS, that's Pima County, Office of the Sheriff, and sent overnight on 2/12, which was Thursday night. And they arrived at their private lab in Florida on 2/13, which was Friday. The FBI received preliminary results yesterday on 2/14, so they got the results on Saturday. This statement obviously came out on Sunday. And we are awaiting quality control and official confirmation today before putting unknown male profile into CODIS. That's their national database unique to the Bureau. So they say it's a man. Okay, that's something we didn't know. It was a man who was wearing those gloves, and those gloves do have DNA on them, and the analysis was performed by the Florida lab. And before the FBI uploads the results to CODIS, their national database that shows you all sorts of bad guys who are in there or suspected bad guys, you can take DNA now from people who are arrested, and of course, those who are convicted. They're awaiting quality control and official confirmation before they upload the results into CODIS. Then they write, the process typically takes 24 hours from when the Bureau receives them. And again, they said they got the preliminary results on Valentine's Day, Saturday, and it takes 24 hours from when they receive them to do this quality control. So ideally, at some point yesterday, they were able to do the quality control and upload it. They write, investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near the house. Most of them were searchers' gloves that they discarded in various areas when they searched the vicinity. The one with the DNA profile recovered is different and appears to match the gloves of the subject in the surveillance video. The wording of this is not perfect. The one with the DNA profile recovered. Now, we don't know if what they mean is the one pair recovered 2 miles from her home in a field is different from all these 16 others or 15 others, in that it appears to match the gloves of the subject, or if they mean one of the 2 gloves that we recovered in the field has DNA. Either way, it's kind of the same thing. They're saying that pair of gloves discovered in the field is much more interesting to us. They do appear to match in type, in look, in brand, perhaps, the ones that the actual perpetrator was wearing. And they're saying most of these other gloves are just discarded by searchers. And then they finish by saying the FBI has and will continue to provide assistance on whatever timeline is provided to us. Again, they're not running herd on this, and they're not getting the first crack at the DNA analysis, or possibly any crack at the DNA analysis. They're just waiting for the quality control on the DNA analysis, and then they're going to upload it into CODIS, which is the database of offenders, to see if it's a match. And then presumably they will also cross-reference to the DNA. This is the other most promising lead that was found in the Guthrie home, and the sheriff has told us now that they are looking. They have found DNA inside Nancy's house that does not match anyone. That does not match Nancy and does not match, quote, those in close contact to Nancy. All right, so they've collected that inside of Nancy's house, and that is now being analyzed. So they're trying to get a name on that stuff. It will presumably be uploaded to CODIS, as will the DNA from these gloves. And whoa, we're in business if we have a match from somebody who was inside the Guthrie house and had those gloves on. Boom, Bob's your uncle. That's what they're looking for, among other things. That would be great if they could find that. Now, what will they do if there's not a direct hit in CODIS? Well, they may do one of a couple things. They may get a hit, first of all, from some distant relative of somebody who is in CODIS. That's possible. And that is how they caught Brian Kohlberger. He wasn't in CODIS, and nobody he knew was in CODIS, but a relative was in the private DNA data banks that are out there, like I think it was Ancestry.com. And normally, they are not allowed, the feds, to look in those, to do DNA matching against those. Normally, they're supposed to stick to CODIS. There is a button you can check when you upload your DNA into 23andMe. Well, they're gone now, but Ancestry.com or a company like that saying, I'm fine if you put me in the law enforcement database. Like if one of my relatives turns out to be a criminal, I don't mind if you catch them off of my DNA. That's, I think, what I would do. But in any event, I'm not in there. And I don't know, it's an interesting question. Like they're asking all the gardeners and so on to give DNA. And I think if I were like in this situation where I just happen to be in the home of somebody who's obviously a victim of a crime and they said, can I please have your DNA? I think I'd give it. But I'm not sure. I'm not so big on like just giving my DNA over. I don't, how do you feel? Like if they were just like canvassing house after house saying, can I have your DNA? I think I'd say no. So you can't assume the worst when somebody says, I'm not giving my DNA, or when they say, I'm not uploading my DNA, even though I'm doing Ancestry.com, to be available more widely to feds investigating a crime. However, we learned in Kohlberger, this became a big controversy, that, remember, the defense made a big deal out of this, that apparently it's just policy. It's just a policy. It's not a law with these private databases that they don't share with the FBI. But like in an emergency, they might, or the FBI might just do it because there's not a law stopping them. And our understanding to this day is that that is what they did. That they got a hit on a relative of Kohlberger, or they didn't get a hit, and then they used the other database and they got a hit that basically brought them to Brian Kohlberger's dad. And then what they did once they got the dad is they do genetic genealogy, and they bring in somebody like CC Goddess of this technology, where let's say they find a relative who is like 16 family members removed from the perp, and they can see it's got like a very, very distant relation to the perpetrator of the crime. Then you bring in a CC Moore who starts to do a family tree. Like, you know how some people do their family trees? And it's like, this is the mom, this is the dad, this is the child, this is the offspring, this is where they're from, this is who they married, here are the death announcements. Okay, here he's ruled out, he died, and so on, until you get to who lives in the Idaho area around the date this crime happened. Or now in the Nancy case, who lives in the Tucson area around the date of January 31st, February 1st. And that's how you start zeroing in on a suspect. CC Moore's been on our show. We've talked to her multiple times. She's a genius. And she actually made a comment about this limitation on databases and like what technically they're allowed to access. And here's what she said about what she'd be doing if she were Savannah Guthrie. She spoke to Brian Enton the other day, SOT 3.
Despite the fact that over 50 million people have taken direct consumer DNA tests, for law enforcement cases, we are limited to the 2 or 3 smallest databases, which is less than 2 million people. And I'm hearing a lot of misconceptions out there. People are saying they can use Ancestry, they can use 23andMe. That is not true. Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage, the 3 largest consumer DNA databases, have barred law enforcement's use. And there are 2 well-known databases, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, that have agreed to work with law enforcement. And then there's a new nonprofit called DNA Justice that's much smaller, but it can also be used. And so those are the ones that they will have to work in, unless they can serve a successful warrant on the larger databases. Now, if I was Savannah Guthrie and her family, I would be begging management at Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage to allow the genetic genealogy profile to be compared in there, because it would be a much more straightforward and quicker identification that way. But so far, they've been very, very resistant to that, even though studies have shown that 91% of the public is in favor of using genetic genealogy to identify this type of criminal.
Okay, so that's back to what we were telling you, which is they're supposed to use like the public databases, but happen to know that, you know, if the case is extreme enough, they will move heaven and earth to get into the more commercial databases that have way more information in them. And she's saying if she were Savannah, she'd be demanding or begging the private databases to cooperate and pushing the feds to get a warrant such that they can access those databases. So hopefully they're doing that on all of this DNA. Now, Cece actually went on to describe how if the perpetrator here is Hispanic, and he may be, we're not able to really tell with that ski mask on, but you certainly can't rule it out. You can see that it's not an African American man. You can see that, I think you can see that it's not an Asian man, but it looks to me to either be a white man or a Hispanic man. Even some people have disputed it's a man because he does look like he's wearing eyeliner, but that could just be a function of the bizarre ring camera shot. In any event, here's what she had to say if the perpetrator is Hispanic.
Could they use it in a case like this?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I've been waiting for that to happen, just hoping that there would be DNA found that was not tied to any of the known individuals from the home, because that will solve the case if nothing else does. It's just a matter of time then. What is going to determine how long that takes is what population group that person is from. So if their ancestry is from Latin America and they have recent immigrant ancestors, it'll be much more difficult to identify that individual. So it could take a lot longer. We have a lot of those Hispanic cases, and they tend to take weeks, months, or years compared to somebody who has deep roots in the United States and primarily Northwest European ancestry.
So that's unfortunate because there's a very high likelihood this person is Hispanic. Just given the region of the country that it's in, a very high percentage of Hispanics in Tucson, given its proximity to the southern border. And the guy on the porch does look like he might be Hispanic. So, it's unfortunate. It'll be harder, but it's not impossible. And I'm sure Cece Moore will be brought in, or somebody just like her, if they manage to get it. I mean, she's a national treasure. I thank God all the time that Cece Moore is a young woman. She's not 90 and hopefully will be around for decades more to help fight crime. Feeling sluggish, bloated, not quite like yourself? Life constantly bombards us with silent threats. Processed foods, artificial light, nonstop stress, all of which can disrupt gut health, drain energy, and weaken immune health. When that happens, it's not that your body is broken, it's that it might be missing the right inputs. That's why I want to tell you about Armra Colostrum. It's packed with more than 400 bioactive nutrients that they say can work at a foundational level to fortify gut health, support immune health, fuel recovery, and promote whole body vitality. Strong gut integrity can support metabolism, skin and hair health, even performance and recovery, which is why colostrum has long been valued by some elite athletes as well. If you are looking to take back control of your health from the inside out, consider Armra. And they have a special deal for you now. Go to armra.com/Megyn or enter Megyn to get 35% off your first subscription order. That's armra.com/MEGYN. I mean, she's an incredibly valuable asset to law enforcement. So hopefully there'll be a need to bring her in. And, they've done this time and time again. They did it with the Golden State Killer. They draw these elaborate family trees around you. And even if they can get DNA telling them that this person is of a certain ethnic background, like sometimes you're not in CODIS, but they can tell stuff from your DNA about like what you might look like. That can be super helpful. Sketch artists can work off of that. And NBC did a whole feature on this where they came up with a mugshot for Andrea Canning just based off of like the DNA that didn't show it was Andrea Canning. It's not like she's not in CODIS. And it was very good. It was a very solid portrait of her. So the DNA, even without a match, could be potentially helpful, but you'd have to know it's the perpetrators. Just DNA off of the gloves is not that interesting. It has to match something that tells us it came from the crime scene. And we're not there. I wanted to round back just for a second on the search for suspects. Again, these three people from Friday night, not ruled out, but Winter reports they're moving on. But he also reported they're leaning away from the family members, and my own reporting conflicts with that. On the subject of the brother-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, who's married to Annie Guthrie, Savannah's sister. Nanos, in his interview with the Daily Mail, said the following: "Nobody has been cleared, including the workers at Guthrie's home, the people who were recently the subject of the 2 separate SWAT raids and presumably family members, writes the Daily Mail. Now, this is a quote. I stay in touch with them, mostly Savannah. I've not been in touch with Tommaso or Annie too much. I have talked to them a little bit, but I know the investigators are in touch with them. But I've really told people this is a lot of stress. If he, Tommaso Cioni, is guilty, if he's the one who did it, and we're able to prove that, then at that time, jump on it. But don't come out of nowhere with this, he writes. I understand the pundits are out there. They're going to say, well, he's the last one to see her alive. We understand that stuff. But my goodness, you're putting a mark on somebody who could be completely innocent. And more important than that, he's family. It's also why, writes the Daily Mail, Nano said he will not specify who was with Nancy when she was driven home from Cioni and Annie Guthrie's home after going to their house, which is about 10 minutes away for dinner and a game night. Listen to this. Quote, we know who it is, meaning who drove Nancy home. Hello, we do too because you told us. You told the New York Times that it was Tommaso, but now here he is saying, quote, we know who it is, but when we saw everybody was attacking everybody and saying it's this, we just thought, you know what? We'll say it was family. Well, that could have worked perfectly, Sheriff, if only you hadn't gone on the record with the New York Times the day before and said it was Tommaso. This is like, I'm sorry, but this is where you get a little Keystone-y. Nano said the entire Guthrie family has been, quote, nothing but cooperative, end quote, at every turn, despite what for them is a nightmare without end. Quote, everything we've asked for, they've given us. They're in such a state of grief, but they're also, you know, I think they're a little weary, too, of what's been going on and being said about them, end quote. Nanos will also not reveal if there were any signs of forced entry, nor give details as to whether Nancy was taken out the back or front door to what presumably was a waiting vehicle. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Like, how do you expect to get away with that, Sheriff? You went on the record with the New York Times and said it was Tommaso, and now you want us to just forget that and just, quote, go with family? And then you tell the Daily Mail that this is exactly why you changed it to family, which we only suspected before. We didn't know for sure whether you were just confused about it. But now we know for sure you have no confusion and you changed it because you felt bad for Tommaso. Okay. We all feel bad for Tommaso if he's innocent in all of this. But until you guys tell us he's ruled out, he's on the table. And that's what we're being told by other law enforcement as well. I mean, this is how an investigation goes. And he was the last person seen with her. And obviously, you always look at family when you're trying to rule out what may have happened, especially in this case to an 84-year-old woman who was kidnapped and possibly killed. And it's not, as we've been saying, like a baby where there's a market for this type of person if they, you know, wind up the victim of a kidnapper. Okay. Law enforcement also saying, heard the number now, that they've received 40,000 tips. 40,000. I mean, that's huge. And Sheriff Nano is saying publicly now that there will be a lot of police activity every day in this case. There was a report over the weekend that the Pima County Sheriff's Department was using helicopters with the so-called signal sniffers underneath the tracks to possibly ferret out any pacemaker signals coming from down below. Now, I don't know what their capability is. We know that the actual pacemaker in Nancy Guthrie will not connect with its iPhone if it's more, we've heard, between 10 and 30 feet away from her. Maybe these signal sniffers have higher sensitivity and can connect farther from that, because I can't get within 30 feet in a helicopter from somebody's house. I think that would be scaring a lot of residents. So it's got to be more sensitive than that, but great technology if they can use it. I mean, I only wish that it had been used every day since the day she went missing, ubiquitously, because it seems a little late to be trying that. We are told that the pacemaker signal will go on even post-mortem. It will continue to transmit. So in other words, if you got Nancy's iPhone within 30 feet of her right now, no matter where she is, dead or alive, her pacemaker would still be signaling. So hopefully that'll provide some help. I mean, who knows? Again, the two best leads right now are the DNA that was inside the home that's being analyzed, says the sheriff, and the pictures from the guy on the porch, and still waiting for somebody to call in and say who that is. They're going through these 40,000 tips, sometimes as many as 5,000 tips a day, which is a lot. Okay, last but not least, Savannah. She issued an Instagram post on Sunday. It was the most recent communication. And this one seemed as close as we've had to the real Savannah, as opposed to like very, very carefully curated messaging. But I think, let's be honest, this one was carefully curated too. There's no way, given the stakes here, she would just be winging it. I wouldn't either. Be doing exactly what the FBI told me to do. But anyway, you tell me. Here she is with her message on Sunday.
I wanted to come on, and it's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. And we believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
Oh, I feel for her. I feel for her family. You can see the tears in her eyes. You can see just the wear and tear on her emotionally. You know, you can see her sad eyes. And I mean, look, there's no love lost between yours truly and NBC, as you know, but when you picture Savannah Guthrie, you picture her smiling. You're like, it's the Today Show thing. That's by design. But this has just been such a dramatic turn just into the Savannah that we all know from television. You know, there's not an iota in there of joy or happiness. Not right now. How could there be when you don't know what's happened to your mom, when you're getting to the point where many are starting to presume she's dead, she's been murdered or allowed to die in the in captivity. But it definitely seems like she's speaking to the abductor, trying to say like almost like I forgive you. She didn't say that, but like I believe there's goodness in you. Please consider giving her back to me, like begging. It's basically she's asking for mercy, and saying kind of, I don't think you're evil. Please give me my mom back. Please, you could still do the right thing. Like I still believe in human goodness. And this could be potentially very effective if indeed her mother's in the custody of a Savannah Guthrie stalker, which she could be. That is still very much a possible lane. I mean, you've got the family member lane. Is it Tommaso? Is it somebody else in the family? You've got the stalker lane. Is it somebody who is obsessed with Savannah? You've got the burglary or general like Tucson thief lane. Somebody there who was like looking to steal or do something else and wound up, just getting over his skis and panicked and took Nancy Guthrie. You've got the disgruntled landscaper. She didn't tip. They had a spat lane, like revenge, but not against Savannah, against Nancy. But if we're in lane number 2, the Savannah stalker lane, that's a very effective message. That's like her, direct to cam, without the brother and sister, a little makeup on, saying, I believe you might be a good person. And maybe you just got confused and got a little panicked. And it's not too late for you. It's not too late for you to do what's right. I still have hope. I still have belief, an emotional connection. if you will, where she says it. Well, I'm just pulling up. It's been 2 weeks and our mom was taken. Still have hope, still believe. Whoever has her or knows where she is. So appealing not only to the abductor, but to those who, because you know as well as I do, it's not just the abductor who knows where Nancy Guthrie is. Absolutely not. And then even going so far to say, you're not lost or alone. You're not lost or alone. Like a psychological appeal. If you're feeling, I mean, because of course, who would do this, right? Who would do such a thing? Indeed, somebody who would have to be feeling lost, alone, possibly, or just diabolical. But she's going the nicer route, trying to appeal to their better angels, to their sense of decency, morality, and mercy. International disputes, inflation, rising national debt, digital currency. There's a never-ending list of reasons gold has risen over 700% in the last 20 years. And a never-ending list of reasons smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals with Birch Gold Group. Gold can thrive during uncertainty, which is why it's a crucial part of a balanced strategy. It gives you peace of mind, given all the events that could impact the U.S. economy. See if holding gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account is right for you. Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, consider letting Birch Gold help you diversify with gold, so you too can have peace of mind regardless of the uncertainty. Text MK to 989898. You know Pure Talk's favorite holiday? It's President's Day, because they believe wireless service should cost you only a couple of presidents. Just a Jackson and a Lincoln, to be exact. For just $25 a month, Pure Talk gives you unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data. Now compare that to Big Wireless. They'd rather celebrate Benjamin Franklin Day, so they can charge your family hundreds every month. That's not right. You deserve better. Pure Talk is an American wireless company who supports our veterans and invests in a U.S.-only customer service team. So when you call, you're talking to someone right here at home. Pure Talk uses the same towers as the big carriers, so enjoy superior 5G coverage without the inflated price. Just $25 a month for talk, text, and plenty of data. No contract, no cancellation fee. What are you waiting for? Just dial pound 250 and say keyword Megyn Kelly, and you will get 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250 and say Megyn Kelly to make the switch to Pure Talk. What Savannah Guthrie needs right now, what Nancy Guthrie needs right now, is the people of Arizona and beyond to stay on this case and story. The last thing the family needs is for the media to pack up its tents, because they will. Trust me, it never goes on forever. The last thing they need is for them to pack up their tents, put away their stick mics, close their podcasting equipment, and go home. Because it will be the public that drives tips in this case, leads in this case, pressure on the perpetrator eventually, and on law enforcement to stay on this. They've got a lot of cases to solve. They got a lot of even bigger cases, sadly, kidnappings, murders, rapes. That's crime in the United States, and they will not stay on this forever. And this is something that this twit reporter over at MSNBC needs to understand. I've never heard of this fucker before, but I'm going to play you this person's soundbite. This is the new MS Now, and it's reporter Alex Tabbitt over the weekend. SOT 4.
What's also interesting about what happened Friday evening and Saturday morning is not just what we know, but also the number of false reports that came out over that time span. All of that speaks to an interesting and somewhat dystopian dynamic on the ground here, Jackie, and that is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of members of the local, national, and international media here. But there are also hundreds of influencers. And in these moments of developments in this story, they will go live to their hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of viewers, and I will overhear them just say things. Things that are not based in fact, things that are not based in reality or have been checked with the local authorities. See how some of these comments that are made without regard to the fact that a woman's life potentially hangs in the balance here, how those little comments snowball into this misinformation and disinformation.
Oh my God. Of all networks to be lecturing us on mis and disinformation, why don't you talk to your big boss, Rachel Maddow, and all the rest of the primetime lineup about Russia, Russia, Russia? You want to talk about falling down on the job? As he's speaking in the lower third on the channel, coming up next, exclusive interview with Doug Emhoff. What did you do the first time you had a big exclusive with Doug Emhoff? Why don't you ask Joe Scarborough? He didn't ask him about the allegations that he likes to beat women at all. Okay? So we're not going to be taking lessons from you, twit reporter, on how to handle a news story. And the nerve of this asshole to try to chide the influencers and the podcasters who are out there trying to cover this case into doing it more like MSNBC or not doing it at all. It's thanks to them that we have half the interest in this case. They're the ones who are following around law enforcement. Yes, and by the way, most of them have been extremely careful about not broadcasting the specific locations of the law enforcement operations when they're executing on these warrants, because they understand that could give a tip off to the bad guys. They're just looking for content and wanting to help solve this case. There are responsible reporters, I would include this show among them, who listen to these influencers all day and night and take from them what we think is valuable, discern what is appropriate to report, and make judgment calls on what we're going to broadcast to the audience. But they've been invaluable to us. And rather than dumping all over them because you think you have all the answers at MS Now, you might open up your eyes and ears and take a listen to what they're reporting. Interviewing neighbors, going to locations that the networks have not gone, following up on the locations where we've seen police activity to try to ask the people involved, what did law enforcement ask you? What did they say to you? And let me tell you, there's not a family in America with a missing loved one that wouldn't give their eye teeth to have this same influencer crew show up on their back door and get interested in their cases. How dare you try to discourage them? Attention is exactly what is needed in the case of any missing person. You have it all wrong. You're an idiot. And by the way, this guy, we looked him up, just see what's his background. Like why does he think he's in such a position to lecture all the reporters on how this needs to be done? Well, here it is. He has previously freelanced for PBS. Oh, okay. So you couldn't even get hired by PBS in a real job? And not just PBS, just PBS NewsHour, one property over there. And then there was his internship for CBS, but not even CBS News, CBS Interactive, whatever the hell that is. And then a stint with ARC Media, which I've never heard of, and I don't even know if it's a real thing. From his LinkedIn report, political reporter and documentary journalist. Really? What'd you do? I don't see anything. Writer, TV presenter. Are you from the UK? Because over here, we don't use that term. And social media producer. Oh, I see. So you managed somebody's X account or Instagram or did your own little reports on there. Who doesn't believe good journalism should be constrained by medium. Okay, I think you mean is doesn't believe in good journalism, period. That's my takeaway having watched you. New Yorker with Spanish and Lebanese heritage. Oh, it's important. That's what I listed in my bio too. Irish and Italian heritage, by the way, you should know. Mostly European. Okay, like who lists their heritage in their bio as a reporter? Then he writes, calm in chaotic breaking news environments and always hungry for a scoop. Well, that's clearly not the case, because if you were always hungry for a scoop, you would be listening to these on-the-ground, intrepid influencers who you so disdain and trying to figure out whether they might actually have something that you don't have. You don't have to take it all. I'm not backing everything they've done, but we listen all day to these people. We follow them on X, we follow them on YouTube, and we decide what rises to the level that it could make it on the Megyn Kelly Show? And we've cited many of them by name and have absolutely no qualms about doing it. We actually are seasoned reporters here, not just me, but my team as well, and know the difference between good reporting and bad, and don't consider ourselves above anybody. If you have good reporting and we can shore it up, it'll make it onto the MK Show. And if it turns out to be wrong, we'll correct that with our audience. But this is just another example of the elitists who are out there still thinking they're the gatekeepers in news and desperate to shame the new medium out of existence. Instead of saying, thank God that in a case of a missing person, you've got all of these people who, by the way, young people are almost exclusively following social media and podcasters. They're not watching MS now. You literally have to be over 75 years old to watch that, according to the numbers. So the odds are somebody young is going to be who knows this person on the porch. He's not 80. He seems to be probably in his 30s. How are we going to reach them? Through influencers, through YouTube, through social media. So in any event, it's just like, it's really stunning to me, the snobbery of someone who did an internship for CBS Interactive on what you can and cannot report and from whom you can and cannot get your news. Hashtag part of the problem, Alex. So we will be back on the air with a full show tomorrow, Tuesday, which will include an update on this case, but we're going to do a lot of other news tomorrow as well. And then on Wednesday, we actually are preparing an in-depth report on Epstein and all that's been learned, which is turning out to be very interesting. I think you'll enjoy that as well. And in the meantime, thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.